Good day. Welcome to Portsmouth This Week. This is the 21st of September 2012 rendition. I'm Jeff Richard. I'll be hosting today. And with me from the Portsmouth Fire Department is Captain Mike O'Brien. He is the Training Coordinator and the EMS Coordinator for our fire department. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I think everybody would like to know right out immediately, what exactly does the Training EMS Coordinator do in the fire department?
Well, on the EMS side, I'm responsible for making sure the ambulances run properly. I make sure they're stocked, supplied properly with all the equipment, and as far as documentation, I make sure that all the documentation for all the runs and all the calls that they go on is done properly. I do quality control where I look over the reports and make sure they're done properly. They contain the correct information. And once that's, if there's any problems with the reports, I kick them back, and it's kind of a training opportunity. And once that's completed, I actually organize the reports and I export them for billing, and I send them out to a billing company that the town contracts. So that's basically what my responsibilities on the EMS side of things.
How did you, while I have it in my mind here, how did you get trained to have that responsibility?
As far as the supplies or
the EMS side of it.
EMS side? It's more or less coming up through the ranks. I've been in the fire department for 16 years in Portsmouth. I was one of those guys that kind of took on responsibility as I went. So it was trial by fire. I just kind of took over certain responsibilities and took over more responsibilities as time went on, and that's where I'm at today. So.
Very good. Where did you go to school to learn how to be an
EMT?
Medical? Yeah, an EMT.
As far as performing EMT as an EMT, I went to Northeastern University to become a basic EMT, and then I took a class from actually a Tiverton firefighter to become a EMT cardiac, which is an advanced life support certification.
Is that the highest level of medical training?
It's not. It's not. It's that training takes about 6 months of school and clinical time. There's a paramedic level as well, which is about a year of school and possibly another year of clinical time. So that's paramedic's the highest level that we have in the fire department.
Okay. Is there a Rhode Island educational institution that you can go to before you make application to be a firefighter in Rhode Island? There is.
You can go to CCRI. They provide an EMT class, and you can also go to BCC. But that's usually their program. Their curriculum is focused more on obtaining a mass license. So it's a bit of a challenge. There might be some additional training that you'd have to take to become certified in Rhode Island after the BCC program.
So if you woke up one day and you were 18 and say, I would like to be a firefighter in Portsmouth, what's the process to make that happen?
Well, unfortunately, if you were 18, you'd have to wait 3 years.
Okay, so
it's 21.
21 minimum.
But the first thing that I would focus on if I was starting out and wanted to be hired as a firefighter is I would enroll myself in an EMT basic class, and because you can't be an EMT cardiac without having your EMT basic license, and I would complete that training. As far as making myself a more attractive applicant, I would probably seek out a volunteer fire department, get involved, build a resume, get certifications.
Where's the closest volunteer fire department that somebody who's living in Portsmouth could go to? I know Bristol has a volunteer.
Bristol has a volunteer fire department. Jamestown, Warren, they have volunteer fire departments. Typically, it's difficult for you to volunteer and be active on the trucks if you're an out-of-towner.
Yeah.
But on the EMS side of their departments, they welcome out-of-towners because it's more difficult for them to fill those positions with in-town volunteers.
I see. Okay.
So it's one way of getting your foot in the door.
Yeah. Once you've got the basic EMT course done, then you're going to make application. At that point, if hired, your continuing training is part of your responsibility as the training official.
Absolutely.
How does that work over time? Going back to my service career in the Navy, I think I spent 80% of my time at sea in a training mode because we had lots of young people on our ships, and And they were constantly in need of the latest and greatest skills. So how do you do that in your department?
What we do is we follow standards, and now they're not mandates. They're basically they're national organizations. The NFPA, they set standards for Firefighter 1, which is the entry level, and then Firefighter 2, which is basically means that you can work independently at a fire scene, and you have driver operator certifications and pump operations. These are all things that have been standardized, and they have set like a criteria that you have to meet and information that you have to know to get those certifications. Myself and other members of the department are actually certified NFPA fire instructors, so we can take our recruits, we can take our permanent firefighters, and we can train them to these levels. If I have a certification, I'm qualified to turn around and certify someone else at that level.
Pretty good. We don't have a fire tower or a training facility per se.
We have.
What do we have?
We have a training tower at the back of our station. It was a homemade operation. It's actually made of 4 telephone poles and some plywood, and it's a nice training tower. It's about 4 stories high, and we use it for high angle rescue training.
But you can't light a fire on it and go fight it.
We could light one nice fire on it, but that would be it.
Is there someplace locally, another community that has? You must go for live fire training someplace.
We do.
Yeah.
One of the best places that I've been to is Barnstable Fire Academy out in the Cape. But the Rhode Island Fire Academy, while they don't have a traditional recruit academy, they do have a facility that opened in the past year, and it's a state-of-the-art facility, and we have traveled down there. And we've actually, Jamestown Fire Department has a facility that they allow us to use as well.
So do you man up a vehicle and take the whole crew down there?
We do. To the credit of the people that work at the Portsmouth Fire Department, they'll come in on their own time. A good number of them will come in on their own time and do live fire training because they're enthusiastic about the job. They welcome the opportunity to fight a live fire. So they'll come in off duty. We'll grab our reserve truck, hop on and head down to one of the facilities, and it's a good day. It's a lot of fun.
Good. Can you tell me just a little bit about the kind of medical services that are provided by your department?
We respond to pretty much people. It's amazing what people call us for. Sometimes it's the most routine and minor thing, and other times, I mean, it's just a huge emergency with multiple victims, but we never, we just respond. We have to respond out. We have to answer a call, because even a call that sounds like it's minor in nature, sometimes it turns out to be very serious. But we respond to motor vehicle accidents, cardiac emergencies, diabetic emergencies. With our aging population, we provide a lot of patient assists.
Is Portsmouth really aging? I mean, I'm not the only white-haired guy living in Portsmouth.
I'm not going to throw that stone, because if you notice, there's the whites coming in. But we do a lot of patient assists, and more every year, where we have older people that aren't able they've fallen down and they can't get up, things like that. And they're not injured, they just need assistance. 100% of the time, we're able to provide advanced life support, which is key. I served in the Air Force, and I had the good fortune to work with firefighters from all over the country, and so I worked in jurisdictions that provided a certain level of care, and I'm fortunate to have that perspective, because when I got to Portsmouth, I was amazed by the quality of care that we provide in this town, and I was really just amazed by it. I was in awe of how well the guys performed their job. And people who don't have that perspective, and our responders, they kind of take it, I don't know if they take it for granted or they just don't have that perspective. Our responders really do a great job in this town, and they provide a high level of care, and I'm grateful that I have that previous experience, so I can appreciate it a little bit more.
You're responsible for the continuing education, so once, how do you keep up with the state of the art? When is it time to buy a new defib or
Well, when we have technical issues with the defibrillators, things like that, then of course we're going to want to start buying them. generally what happens is things get added to our plate. They're never taken away. The standard has always risen. The state provides, unlike the fire side, the state does provide mandates when it comes to medical care. You need to be able to pace someone's heart rate, put a monitor on them and take over their heart rate. We need to be able to cardiovert certain rhythms and defibrillate. And we should be able to provide CO2 monitoring, which is basically it's a way of us to monitor how well somebody's breathing. So you have to have devices to provide that type of care. And if you can't, so these mandates don't come with funding. So that's
a problem in Rhode Island.
It is. And so we have to spend the money. And fortunately, we were recently able to address our cardiac monitor need. We did have to update our cardiac monitors because we received a donation that more than covered the cost of two cardiac.
That's nice. Yeah. That's good.
It was a nice old couple that had passed away.
What kind of obstacles do you find in the delivery of patient care? What gets in the way of that?
It depends. Typically, when we arrive, people are generally happy to see us, and so they've met us on the street. They're bringing us in. Sometimes we have obstacles with dogs, things like that. We've had problems with our guys being attacked by dogs. Things. So those are general those are obstacles to care. But one of the biggest obstacles to patient care, I think, is maybe the ability of the victim's loved ones to provide care before we get there. It takes time to get to a scene, and if somebody's down, and not breathing, and it takes us 5 minutes to get there, I mean, that's damage being done. And if somebody was able to perform CPR or rescue breathing or something like that, that's going to make that patient viable. And the likelihood of us being successful, I mean, we could be the best paramedics in the world and have the best equipment in the world, but if a person's down for 7-8 minutes without any intervention, then it really it's meaningless.
Yeah. In the case of stroke or heart attack, for instance, the literature that I've been reading, the things that each of us really should be aware of doing in each of those instances was, I carry aspirins in my pocket now all the time. How could you construct a training program for our town that would make it more obvious that everybody really needs to have those skills in the house?
It's one of those opportunities where we have it's difficult for us to get out and communicate with the town directly. So it's one of those things where we need to take advantage of shows like this and social media and get the message out there. As you know, we're having an open house. I think it's next Sunday, not this Sunday, but the following Sunday at the Portsmouth Fire Department from noon to 2 o'clock. That's an opportunity for us to communicate and maybe provide them with the names of some of our educators. We have certified CPR instructors and people like that. And it's all about awareness. It's getting the message out there. And in my own experience with people who are having heart attacks, there's a lot of denial going on. There's the doom and gloom. I can't, having never had a heart attack, I can't put myself in their shoes. But there's some really genuinely terrified people, and they don't want to even consider the fact that they're critically ill. And I think education's the key to get through to these people and their loved ones.
Does your department offer CPR classes, or does that kind of education of the public get done in CCRI or Red Cross?
Red Cross, CCRI. We have firefighters in the fire department. I'm a CPR instructor, and there's several more that provide it in their own time. So it's kind of a private vendor. So I'm not going to promote their
Understood.
but we have people there that can provide them with CPR training.
Yeah. So speaking of which, in terms of your week, the typical firefighter spends so much time at the office and so much time not. How does a week for you, or the average, if you're not average?
If you're part of the command staff, you're there Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning until your work's done, 4:30, 5 o'clock. If you're a responder, you work 10-hour days, 2 10-hour days, and then you work 2 14-hour nights. And then traditionally you're on call for the first 2 days and then off for the next 2 days. Portsmouth Fire Department, when I first started, was a callback fire department. We had very few responders on duty, and they would call off-duty guys in for any emergency that the on-duty crew couldn't handle. And we've gotten away from that a bit because it's kind of reactionary. It didn't work well. And so we've had to put additional staffing on duty. So the on-call part of that whole schedule has become less important. But that's generally how the work week works.
How many EMTs would respond to a call, a typical call from someone at home thinking they're having a heart attack?
If it's a suspected cardiac emergency, we would leave the station if we had the staffing available with 5 firefighters, EMT firefighters, and they would be responding in the ambulance and the engine, in the fire engine. The reason for the 5 firefighters, one of the basic, most primary reasons is for the carries. When I first started, we would respond out to a cardiac emergency with 2, maybe 3 firefighters, and on-scene times were not acceptable. We were spending too much time on scene, and our guys were being injured because there was too few people carrying the patient. And so for one of the reasons is for our safety, our health. We're not going to get injured carrying these people out. We have enough help on scene to do a 4-man carry versus a 2-man carry. Second is that, as I said before, there's plenty of things that the state mandates, like care that we have to provide. Mm-hmm. We perform 12-lead EKG. We administer medications. We start IVs, oxygen monitoring, and basically, and it's really cool to be a part of a well-run crew, because all these things get done without a word being spoken. Everybody has a job to do. You jump in, and it turns a 20 or 30-minute on-scene time into a 10-minute on-scene time, because time is muscle when somebody's having a heart attack. You want to get them to the cath lab as fast as you can. Right. So it's another reason for the fire truck is if another event happens in Portsmouth, that fire truck is going to be available to that event. We don't have to return back to the station to get the fire truck to go to the fire. So it's kind of it's our way of being efficient.
Okay, how many ambulances do we actually own?
Well, the town of Portsmouth doesn't own any of the ambulances. Okay. The Portsmouth Volunteer Fire Department owns our ambulances, and they own 3 ambulances. And we keep 2 ambulances in service there's 2 ambulances currently in service in the town right now, and we have a reserve ambulance. And if one of the ambulances breaks down or needs service, then we put the 3rd one in service. Okay. And,
but they're all kept at the station?
That's correct, and they're staffed by... Didn't
I see something about the volunteer part of that organizational structure was going away?
That's correct. It's kind of a sad thing. They've been in business since 1935. They're a great organization, and I think back to the people that have been involved in that organization. It's kind of a sad thing. They've done an incredible amount of good for this town, and they've directly and indirectly saved lives. So I imagine that the picture of this, or the makeup of this town, would be different if they never existed.
It must go back to when the force the department was all volunteer. Mm-hmm. And then the changeover, the decision to have full manning was made, but the decision to keep those people who were integral part of the volunteer structure probably was why we kept it. That's a guess. I don't know. I wasn't here.
No, it's pretty accurate. Henry Wilkie is like one of probably the best known Portsmouth volunteer, and he's the one that he basically went to New York City, worked in their ambulance service, came back to town, and modeled our ambulance service after what he based on what he had learned in New York City. And over the years, gentlemen like Johnny Martin and Herbie Rigo were like our first paid firefighters, and they worked up there by themselves and were augmented by the volunteers. And in the 1970s, early 70s, maybe 1970 itself, they started having 2, 3, 4 guys on. And some of that was because of the demand for services when we had Navy, and we had the Navy was very present, had a big presence in town. But yep, that's basically, it's been, we've kept them around because they raised a ton of money that we were allowed. We could buy whatever medical equipment, whatever rescue equipment. The Jaws of Life, our first set of Jaws of Life, that was purchased by the volunteers. we've had the good fortune to be able to go out and buy the equipment we needed, and money wasn't as much of a concern. So it's why they've lasted as long as they have. I'm a member of the volunteers as well, and most of the paid guys are members of the volunteers. And that's kind of unique because usually a fire department and a volunteer fire department, they don't play well together. And to be honest, most of the union firefighters were members of the volunteer fire department as well.
Well, that's good. That works. So now we'll be turning the financial needs that were satisfied by the volunteer group. Now we'll be back into the town, into the town side. So.
Yeah, that's it's going to be a challenge because it's when we needed to buy an ambulance, we go out and we buy an ambulance. We're going to have to find we're going to have to advertise, go out for bid, and
right.
Cost is a factor, and it's going to be challenging. It's going to be something different for us, that's for sure. I'm in charge of managing the EMS budget, and it's something that it's, I appreciate a good challenge, but it's something that I have to really pay attention to the bottom line compared to when the volunteers were holding the purse strings.
I understand you have some ladies in the department now. There's, if I recall, the controversy early on that everybody thought that we couldn't have ladies in the fire department because they couldn't carry a 265-pound person out of a building. But how we've gone beyond that, obviously, and you have ladies in your department.
We have a female dispatcher that started about a month ago, and we have a female firefighter who started about a year ago. Okay. And I was actually her training officer. When she was a recruit, I got her through her probation. She's done great. She's in training to be a paramedic, so she'll have the highest certification that we have, medical certification, and above all, it's the work ethic that she's had and the attitude she's had towards improving herself on the fire side has been her strong point.
The issue of privacy strikes me as a good question. Can you recall from your experience these last 16 years a couple of examples of more interesting calls that you could talk about that are not, wouldn't violate anybody's privacy? If
you talk to any of my friends, I love telling stories. I love telling stories about the fire department, but it's a difficult line to walk. We don't see people at their best moment typically, right. And when I tell stories, I try to focus on the positive. I think back to my first time I performed CPR as a Portsmouth firefighter. It was on a lady that lived a few houses down from me, a lady I'd known all my life, and we successfully resuscitated her. She's still alive today. That was 16 years ago, and that's a positive outcome. That's something that I try and dwell on. I try to focus on. I try not to dwell on the negative. I responded to the station nightclub fire in an ambulance, and that's something that that'll always stay with me and I'll always remember. But it's not something that I tend to dwell on because there's so many positive things, so many things that you can be proud of, and that you've made a difference with. Those are the stories that I try and tell. And the current acting chief, Mike Cranston, and I delivered a baby one night in a basement apartment floor. It's just you never know what's going to happen, and those are the happy stories that you try and focus on, not so much the car accidents and the lives lost, and you think about that too, but you try and focus on the good things.
Good.
But you always have to be careful of violating people's privacy because you see people at their absolute worst time, and you learn things about people that. Their medical histories and things like that. And it's really, really, really important that you protect people's privacy.
Can you get to medical histories now? I know the country has been trying to come to some way to get a hold of an individual's medical history in terms of the needs, the medications they're taking, etc. So, how automated is that system now? And you're on your way to 55 Wamsutta, and can you call up Jeff Richard and determine how many pills I take, which are many?
Unfortunately, I can't, and it's terrible. And if you're not able to speak for yourself, I could potentially give you a medication that conflicts with something that you're already taking.
Okay.
If I treat you once, and my EMTs have done a good job, and they've got a medical history from you, then I know that it'll be there for me the next call.
Okay, you keep that information.
Yeah, it's maintained in a database, and it's backfilled into our reporting system. But if I've never met you or if we've never treated you, I don't have that information, and there's nowhere for me to find it.
Uh-huh.
So that's unfortunate.
Mm.
So
when you've gotten to, I was recently reading on the revision of the CPR model now that we've no mouth to mouth anymore. It's all compressions, fast and furious compressions.
Mm-hmm.
That everybody's trained that way now. Is that the correct way to do business?
It is for the lay person, but we still have to provide ventilation.
But you're doing it with a
bag valve mask or a pocket mask, and it's the reason for that is basically the blood needs to be pushed around. There's I'm trying to think of the word, lactic acid. When you work out and you get that pain in your muscles, when you're not perfusing, that lactic acid builds up in your heart. So they want you to go to town and do those compressions, get that lactic acid out of the heart, get it circulated around the body, because basically our rescue attempts, the things that we would do, the defibrillation, the chemicals, the drugs that we would provide aren't going to work if the heart has all this lactic acid.
Okay.
So we do the same 30-2 type compressions, but we need to have an airway, and if the patient doesn't have an airway, we don't have a patient.
I got you. I was doing some statistical analysis of how the activities of the nation's fire departments have shifted over time, and from the good job we are preventing fires. Mm-hmm. Means that you don't spend nearly as much time on that part of your training as you do on the medical side. Is that trend continuing to be true?
We do.
More instances of medical assistance than?
Absolutely. 3,000 calls a year, that's about what we do, emergency calls, just under 3,000. And about 66% of that is emergency medical response. Mm-hmm. And our guys are really, really good at providing medical care. It's amazing what we can do. We'll give you the same care that you'll get if you had a heart attack in an emergency room. But on the other side of things, it's very difficult to be good at firefighting because we don't go to as many fires anymore. But one of the strange statistics that you can find is that in the United States we're killing about the same number of firefighters each year, despite the fact that we're going to fewer fires. And
because they're less trained, less prepared?
Part of that is that you can't replace the experience of going to a fire. And the other part of that is the buildings that were built 80 years ago, 100 years ago, withstood fire much better. They were built with heavy-duty materials, where now if buildings are engineered, I'm looking up at this building and I see that this building is dangerous for firefighters to enter if it was involved in a fire because of truss construction. So these things combine to make fires, the fewer fires that we have, more dangerous for our firefighters.
That's perfectly logical. Yep.
And the third part to that is our equipment. Our equipment is so advanced that we're getting deeper into fires. Our turnout gear protects us. We're encapsulated, and we don't feel the heat conditions that we should feel. We aren't able to anticipate flashovers as well as we did in past years. And so even our equipment that's supposed to protect us may be hurting us as well.
And I want to thank you very much. It's been a great conversation, and I hope everybody who watches this show has learned as much as I did. Thank you.